All right, so we did the MLS Data Analysis Project. What we'll be going through, so first we'll be going through the MLS background. What is it? What is it about? The goals of the research, what we analyzed and what we found out. And through that, we'll be going through each of the positions, and that contributes to our goals of the research, such as forwards, midfielders, defenders, goalkeepers. And then we comprised all our data to an 11-man roster who we thought would do the best, and then our summary. So the MLS background, what is it? The MLS League is a pro league for soccer players in the United States. The 2021 season had 27 teams participate, in which they are divided into two groups, the East Conference and the Western Conference. And just like the NFL, they get a random schedule each season, in which from last season's results, they get to play whoever they get chosen. And it doesn't matter what conference they're in, it's just all about points and to make playoffs. And the difference from Europe leagues, which is the prominent pro league people watch, is that MLS players are paid much less, and people see that there's much less skill in the US, along that Europe leagues also have different leagues, such as there's the best of the best leagues, which is Europa, there's B League, there's C leagues, there's a whole bunch more leagues within Europe. So our goals with the data, what did we want to find out? Well, the first goal was to analyze how US players compared to players from other countries playing in the US. And then our second goal was to build an 11-man roster and see why it would succeed. And it is important to note that our 2021 data was from last season, and it was random sampled. For example, we would go into different teams, choose random players, and we choose 27 different players from 27 different teams. So why did we want to do this? Well, the MLS scene is growing in viewership along with expanding every year by adding new teams. Like this year they added new teams. I think it was a new Canadian team. And we wanted to see the comparison from foreign players to US players. And this connects to our 11-man roster, which we compared who was performing better in the league, whether it was US or foreign. So our first position is the forward position. The forward position is different from other positions. They are much more higher up on the pitch, and they are usually the main targets. Usually the players behind them are trying to get to the forwards because usually they're the best at scoring opportunities and usually can win games. They don't pass as much because they're usually getting passed to the most, and usually don't tackle as much because they're not trying to get the ball as much because there's more players behind them, and was a 1-on-4 is pretty hard to do for a forward. So what we found? So we found that foreign players, there was more foreign players as forwards than USA players in total, and then we also found out that they scored the most goals and assists. And then we found who performed better or foreign players. You can pull up the Excel sheet. So here we have our forwards, and as you can see, the US players, if yes or no was if they were US or not. You can see majority of them are foreign. And then statistically, the best forward for the US was CJ Sapong, who was third among the rest of them, who statistically did better than him.
So the next position we got here is the midfielder position. So this is one of the most impactful positions on the pitch because basically we want to try to give them the ball to the midfield so that that midfield can get the ball to the striker, and then they can do the job to score. So they fall more than forwards because their role is more to try to recover the ball, which is important because that allows the team to have more chances and create more occasions in that final four. So next, they try to keep the possession because it's important. Well, it depends from several teams because some teams play more defensive possession, other teams play like to the counter attack, but some teams like to keep the possession too. So they get the ball to the midfield so they can try to move the ball and try to get the ball to the 10 and the 10 then can create from there. There are more players in this position. Why? Because basically it varies between systems. You got 6, you got an 8, you got the 5, you also got the 10. So there's a lot of more competition in here. So what we found that midfielders are the middle of the pack for scoring and assisting. And if John can pull up the data here, we can see that midfielders do more passes than strikers. And this is because we want to try to get the ball to the forwards so they can score. And we can also see that they contribute to goals too, which is important because the role of the midfielder is not only to assist, but if possible, score. Then, if John can pull up the presentation again, we can see that we found that the total 49 players was equal to the US players in total samples. This means that there was an equal distribution between 49 players and US players that were sampled. Next, we got that the 49 stats were better than the US stats, meaning that we can say that 49 players performed significantly better than the US players. Then we got an 11-man roster, which suggests that 49 midfielders, there were more 49 midfielders than US midfielders. Next, we got the defender position. So the role of the defender is basically protecting the player, which basically stands for protecting the goal. They're the last line of defense. They basically get to see all the pitch and get to mark the striker. They control the pace of the game, and they dictate the pace of the game too. Often, they are with the ball and the most because they need to drive the ball and try to make it reach to either to the midfielder or with a long pass to the wingers or forwards. And they often lead to most passes and goals. And if John can pull the data here, we can see all of what I said here. Yeah, so basically we can see they have less goals because their role is not to score. We can also see they have less assists because, as I said, their role is not to assist. They just dictate the game and try to make passes and not risk the ball, because basically if they lost the ball, that's like a new occasion for the opposite team. But we can also see from this data that they commit the most tackles because obviously they need to defend, and they also commit the most fouls. But not only that, they also win a lot of aerial balls because they need to fight with the strikers, so they need to win so they can win the ball and get more occasions to the team, for the team. So what we found, once again, we found that 49 players in total were equal to the US player in total, which means once again there was an equal distribution between 49 players and US players in total. So the 11-man roster, we found that there were more US players in this roster than 49 players. And what we got here is that there were more US players in these statistics than the 49 players. And we also found that the defensive line is the leaders of most accurate passes and falls.
Okay, and the next position that we have is the goalkeeper position. One interesting about this position is that it is an entirely different position compared to field players, and it is to be debated that it is the most important position on the field, considering the fact that it's so important how the goalkeeper commands the field and distributes the ball. This position is also very important because if you have a bad goalkeeper, it causes games to be lost, and it will lead to many more losses, and it just won't be fun. But goalkeepers, their stats that we recorded were saves, PKs, and clean sheets. And what we found with our sample and our data is we found that there's more foreign players in total instead of U.S. players. But even though this is true, there's the U.S. player. The U.S. player's stats is better than the foreign player's stats. And another thing is that even though they're good keepers, all of them failed in the penalty kick saves, which is to be expected. It is very difficult to make such saves. We'll look at the goalkeepers we selected. Here we have our three keepers, which are selected, one from Sporting KC, one from Montreal FC, and one from Cincinnati FC. Obviously you can see the Montreal and Cincinnati FC ones, they are not US born, and they have less saves than the Sporting KC one, who is US born. Tamilia has 67 saves and 7 clean sheets, which is very, very good in terms of goalkeeper wise. And if you remember correctly, one of the things that we were supposed to do was create an 11-man roster. A few things about this 11-man roster that we created was that 45% of the 11-man roster is American, which is pretty nice. But positionally, foreign players did do better in more aggressive areas, and they dominated more of the more of attacking perspective. But American players did a better job defending and not causing as many fouls and giving up opportunities. Some pros to this team that we created would be that it would be a really good possession team, be able to keep the ball and move it around and control the game very well. But while it would be able to do that, it would still have a very good attacking and be good pressure on the other team because of our forwards and midfielders being able to play aggressively and then score very well, which is nice. Cons to the team we've created, just possible ones, is the language barrier due to different nationalities, and then that's very crucial for communication to be on the pitch. Another thing is egos could be very, very big. Just now, if we'll look over here, we'll see the starting 11 that we have selected. So here we have we selected 4 defenders, 3 midfielders, and 3 forwards, which that formation is known as a 4-3-3. And we did select one goalkeeper. The keeper we selected was Tamilia. Had the best saves and the most saves and the most clean sheets. So out of our sample, he was definitely the best. Out of the forwards, we'd say the best in this case is Javier Hernandez, because out of the midfielders, I'd say Luis Carlos Almeida. But for defender, I would say the best defender is Jonathan Mensah. Overall, what we came up with for our summary and what we gathered from our data is that overall, foreign players are still doing better, are doing better in just regular the statistics of the game, like goals and assists, better than Americans for the most part. But in total, though, our data was 40.74% American, which just means that we have a very diverse league, which is very important and very helpful in terms of getting the game to continue growing. With this random sampling method that we have selected to pick the 27 different players, foreign players, we found that foreign players are doing better overall statistically in the MLS, and do take up a majority of spots in the MLS still. But this is data from the 2021 season. Who's to say how the 2022 season will look? But thank you for watching, and